I want to welcome you to the Golden Mic Club. So you can begin eating now. Got a very special guest tonight for the Golden Mic Club. And I think you're going to find him interesting, a creative mind. He says a little crazy, but very creative. Always enjoy talking to my friend Ken Dowe. I worked at KLIF in Dallas back in the old days, in the early 70s. And it was just a bunch of creative guys that Ken Dowe brought together to make the #1 station in Dallas. And in fact, Ken, every station he touched turned to #1. I mean, he knew how to, he knew how to do it. There's a story, he was even driving through a small town. He listened to a station, and it became #1 the next day. The man has magic. Anyway, we got a little video introduction, and thanks to Steve Eberhard for providing some audio clips from his library. And with a limited number of photos that we had to put together, thanks to Dottie Dowe, who transported those to me through the cloud. Put together a little introduction to give you a little background on Ken Dowe. Ken Dowe was one of the great radio DJs, starting in high school as a school DJ, venturing from Mississippi to work in San Diego. He moved to Dallas in the early 1960s to work at KBox, then to Atlanta at WQXI. In 1963, Gordon McLendon brought Dowe back to Dallas to KLIF, the mighty 1190. Ken Dowe was a super hit in the mornings with his Ken Dowe and Granny Emma show. In fact, he was the highest-rated DJ in the 60s on Gordon McLendon's legendary KLIF, earning 60% of a massive listening audience. And the voice of the lovely but easily irritated queen of the jet set, the rich and beguiling 87-year-old Granny Emma, more famous than Ken. Early on, Gordon took Ken off the air to promote him to executive vice president of the corporation, first and only person to ever hold the position during the decades of McLendon's broadcast excellence. So in his mid-20s, he was given the responsibility for all McLendon properties: Dallas, Detroit, Los Angeles, Buffalo, Chicago, San Francisco, and extra news from Mexico over Southern California. And Dallas, San Antonio, Houston, every market Ken touched as a manager or a DJ or an owner, he made the station #1. Later, the McLendons accepted the highest price ever paid for any radio property with the sale of KLIF. And after selling Big Cliff, it was Ken who piloted the remaining dormant McLendon FM station, KNUS, into a #1 leader. In fact, KNUS spread its wings and soared. Just 15 months after the KLIF sale, Dallas had a new #1 station, the iconic market leader, KNUS, the first #1 FM station in America. Ken Dowe, a true legendary Texas broadcaster.
KLIF 1190, Ken and Granny in the morning. Ken and Granny in the morning.
Flirtations, and that's called Nothing But a Heartache at 68 degrees in Dallas. Fair skies today and tonight. Partly cloudy tomorrow, warm both days, with a high today and tomorrow of 88. Oh, that's nice, good weather. Low tonight, 62 degrees. It's 14 minutes after 7 o'clock here in Big D. This minute, you can become a star for a day. Just write KLIF. Do your thing that way.
With the cost of living what it is today, it's a mighty brave man who will undertake to live a double life.
Now, by this time, y'all are probably sitting there, turned to your radio volume wide open, saying, "Where is it, Granny? Where?" The place is St. Clair Motor Leasing, over there on Lemon Avenue, 6306 Lemon. Isn't it unusual why all the automobile dealers is on Lemon Avenue?
That's Aquarius, Let the Sunshine In, the #3 song on the original Top 40 survey at KLIF. The Byron Nelson Golf Classic just around the corner, and all the reports here on KLIF. Golf will never take the place of professional football, though.
Why?
Well, because it just won't. Not until you can boo the putter. Anyway, 68 degrees. I not only boo the putter, I take the putter and throw it in the lake. Have you ever seen me play golf?
No, I haven't. I've been on the course with you many times.
It's 23 minutes after 8 o'clock.
KNUS.
I'm gonna jump up here on top of the turntables, set my hair on fire, streak around the room.
Boy, it's so cold outside this morning, I put on my ski mask and got arrested on the way into work as an incipient streaker.
KNUS Ken Dowe, Grandmother Emma. 71 degrees and a slight chance of more rain today.
I'm gonna do me a Eric Clapton class. Oh man, he flat knocks me clean out. I know a cat named Wild Willie.
Granny, please, let up.
After midnight, we gonna let it all hang out. This is me, former go-go and exotic dancer, Grandmother Emma, just filthy rich.
Now, Grandmother Emma has a quick little story to tell you, and she wants you to know exactly how it came to pass.
That's right, and so it come to pass that years ago, back through the time machine Granny's taking y'all, little Billy Shakespeare. Some people's called him William, his mom and daddy. But Billy discovered he had a talent for writing. And so he sit down in his schoolroom and he wrote. And he turned in his paper to his schoolmarm. And he says, "Schoolmarm," she says, "Huh?" He saith, "I have writteth a good play, but methinketh, me title is too long." And the schoolmarm say, "Well," says Billy Bob, a lot of people don't know his name's Billy Bob Shakespeare, says, "Billy Bob, say, what have you called it, your play?" And he saith unto her, "I call it Julius, grab the girl quickly, before she gets away." And the schoolmarm hit upon the most fantastical idea. She saith, "Billy Bob, why don't you call it Julius Caesar?"
He dominated the mornings in Dallas from that Triangle studio in Dallas. People who were listening back in the day still remember bits that he did, especially Granny Emma, talking about her jet and what she did over the weekend each week.
I was a female impersonator.
Yeah.
That's fun to do when you go back to your high school reunion. What's the most interesting thing you ever did? Well, I was a female impersonator. What?
Okay, Ken,
Yes, sir.
how do you make a radio station or TV station number one in a market?
I don't have a clue. What do you do? What do you think you do?
Thanks for coming.
Dottie, would you hand me that Kleenex down here? Thank you. I'm sorry, my daughter told me that. I said, I'm so having such a bad time with the, yes, I can't remember big words, allergies. She says, come on down here, I'll show you some allergies. But anyway, thank you. Oh, did I knock it down? Okay.
Up a little bit.
There it is.
There you go.
Okay, thank you.
Testing 1, 2, 3.
A lot of the stuff, I need to tell you this. A lot of the stuff that I was involved in over the years, 65 years in radio. I'm a really old guy. But what those things were that I was doing, I constantly have fun. It was a lot of fun. And I would be involved in these various issues and things. And so sometimes I'd get to speak. And a long time ago I read that God made woman as the very first. What? Oh yeah, the lie detector. So I was going to tell you, if I start telling you something and you've already heard it, or somebody else did it, and I think I did, just watch her, because her eyes will begin to roll. And it won't be true, but it'll be fun, and I got to do it.
Okay, back to the question.
Yeah, what?
How do you make a station number one in a market?
Well, first off, the serious side of it is that you listen to what the other guy's doing. We had a station that Dottie and I owned in the San Francisco area, and it didn't have any ratings at all.
Yeah.
And we bought it pretty cheaply because it didn't. So anyway, it was the problem was that they had a tower in Mountain View, and it was licensed to Los Altos. and the tower was pretty low, and it was a low-powered radio station. And they were trying to participate as a San Francisco radio station. I just can't do that. I didn't tell them that. But it was so bad that the signal would literally drop out.
Yeah.
And I bought it, and I said to myself, where is Jim Lupus? I talked to Ken over here a few minutes ago about Jim Lupus. And I found Jim, and I said, Jim, will you come out here and take a look at something? And he said, sure. I said, could you take that antenna, that little bitty antenna sitting up on top of the mountain, and turn it this way? And he said, what would you do? I said, I would cover the Silicon Valley in San Francisco and San Jose. That's what I would do. He said, what about San Francisco? I said, I can't beat San Francisco. That's too far away. So let them have whatever they want. And I already knew kind of what it was that we could do that would play better. And the people in San Jose would like it better because we went out one weekend and I got on the phone and I called the guy who was on the air. I said, hi there. Where are y'all getting that music? Boy, that's real good stuff you're playing. And they said, oh, the owner does it. He does it all himself. I said, really? I knew that. I said, does it himself, does he? Oh, yeah, he's brilliant. So I called Tom Churchill in Phoenix, who did easy listening music for the whole nation. Brilliant, best there is. I said, Tom, do you not have a station in the San Francisco Bay Area? He said, no, I tried to, but nobody will pay any attention, and K-Bay's been out there so long that they're not going to let me in. And I said, you want a job? So he came out and did it. And in about 2 years, that radio station that didn't have any ratings was number 1 or number 2 or number 3 in all the important demos, 2554, in San Jose and across the other area of the Bay. And they lost all that part of their audience. And the guy's name, Rob, worked there, and he told me about it later. He said, I worked for you in Dallas, and I told him, you better watch out. This guy is really going to come after you. Oh, yeah, sure, right. And so when this all happened and the ratings came out, Rob said, I told you so. These guys did a tremendous job. They were so good. It was an easy listening station where I was telling somebody today, it wasn't one, now, would you like to view the body? Which all of them sounded like that. Yeah. I said, we're not going to do that. I said, you play something you don't like, just say, that's a terrible record. I'm never going to play it again. And put it away. Let it go at that.
You helped create easy listening radio. In Dallas, talking about number 1 stations, you put a guy on a flagpole.
I did do that. Yes, I did.
Tell us that story.
I was, we put KNUS on the air, and KLIF, of course, we had for years and years, and it dominated everything. One of the best radio stations in the world. Maybe the best.
Most imitated.
Yeah, and these guys who were there were terrific. I mean, I just, pulled the switches and all. They ran the show, they did it. And when we sold it, first thing that you need to know is Gordon said, we met the people who were going to buy it down at the Hilton Hotel in Dallas. And they made the deal, signed all the papers. And Gordon said, you want our little FM radio station? And they said, no, let's go out here in just a second, we'll see. So they came back about 5 minutes later and said, no, we want the cash cow. We want KLIF, makes all the money. Highest price ever paid for a radio station. Okay. And they said, what would you want for it? And then Gordon looked at me and said, what do you think? And I said, I don't have a clue. No price. AMs aren't doing anything. FMs aren't doing anything right now. $150,000?
Wow.
He said, so they said, no, we don't want it. So we walked back up the street to the McLendon building, and I tell, Gordon says, what are we going to do? And I said, I don't have a clue. But I said, give me a day or two, and I'll see what I can come up with. So the next day, Gordon did all kind of funny things he taught me. Never write a letter, Ken, that's more than a page and a half. The letter you sent to the FCC was great, it was brilliant, and all that was too long. Don't do that. Page and a half. I sent him a page and a half letter. And the page and a half letter said, I need a new tower. I need to move the signal. A lot of things I need to do to it. I need to buy some really great radio personalities. And he said, you're on. Do it. Let's go. So we did it. Put it on the air. I had a couple of stops along the way that were problematic. his son Bart, and I like Bart. I've known Bart since he was a little kid. But Bart got mad because we had been using that radio station because KLIF wasn't really a rock and roll radio station. It was kind of a middle-of-the-road station. And with a lot of rock and roll, but not much. And he said, not much of anything else. But anyway, he said, what we're going to do is, I told Gordon, we'll put a radio station together that is a little bit like KLIF, but not all the way like. He said, don't make it all the way like, because that wouldn't be kosher. That was a clue. That was the exact conversation. And so he goes, we put the station on the air, and Bart, as we put it on, is upset because the other station that had been KNUS, where we played all this hard rock stuff, and we'd get on
heavy metal
yeah,
station.
heavy metal. We'd get on KLI. You like this? Then listen to our heavy little sister. Well, Bart goes to pieces. He said, this is awful. You've ruined it, Dad. It's all ruined. And this is a wonderful lesson for people who are in business. I have used it repeatedly, and it works really well. Bart had brought his dad an entire table full of letters telling how much they hated this new station. And he told his dad, Ken has ruined this radio station. It's all over. So Gordon says, Ken, would you come in here for a second? Bart's got some things he wants to tell you. Tell him, Bart. Good way to go. Bart said, well, I think it should be, and we've got look at all these letters. These people don't like it. And this is a problem. And Gordon says, Ken, have you ruined it? And I said, I don't know. I don't think so. I ruined it. He said, Bart, I don't think he's ruined it either. They were let her run. They pushed her off on the floor, which is pretty rude. It was very effective. So Bart left and said, okay. So we put that radio station on the air. And a year and a half, I guess it was, later, Dallas had a brand new #1 radio station, KNUS, with a bunch of real good guys who put it together. KLIF had dropped down to the bottom of the rankings and never came back.
Yeah, never came back.
And it owned the market. But you have to be careful about what you're doing and listening to what you're doing.
Yeah.
If you want to do a really great radio station today, here, I don't know what's going on in Austin, but if I were to do that, I'd want to know. And you could use, and I'll get back to the guy in the tower in just a minute about KNUS, but you could use a lot of ways to do it. First, you got to get their attention.
Yeah.
So if you heard the radio station and you thought, this is really not so great, wish I could find somebody who had better music, then you find how to find the better music. And you can do that. These days it's pretty easy because you use control groups and figure out what's best. And then you work it out how you're going to play it.
Yeah.
And then you got to get the attention of the people who are out there listening. So you do something like, let's say a Friday afternoon. You say, what we're going to do is have a brand new radio station for you on Monday. And then you put it on the air with a message, only this message that says, and now here is a great new song by, at that time, whatever, the Beatles, whatever, by the Beatles. And you play something that's really silly and stupid and that nobody likes. They're coming to take me away, ha ha, ho ho, hee hee. And you just do that, you know? And then you come back with another one and say, now this is really a great new artist who's just come out, and she's really famous for her portrayals in movies and all that, and you name a couple of big hit records, and here she is. They're coming to take me away. So you keep doing this over and over, and of course the phone's going crazy, you know? Yeah, that's not who that is. That's not so-and-so, that's not Mama Cass, that's something else. And you just say nothing. You play it again. And you do it all day Saturday.
And you got their attention.
All day Sunday, and the whole place goes crazy. I've been part of all this. I know what this does. The phones ring like crazy, you know, and they say, you're not playing Mama Cass, you're playing that stupid, I'm gonna take you away song. That's what you're doing. So about 4 o'clock, by this time the FCC's already heard from me, you know, they know, you're gonna be in trouble for doing this, you know. And, oh, we won't do it anymore then. We won't do that. And as time passes and Monday comes, maybe on the way home, Monday afternoon, here comes a brand new radio station with fabulous music on it from all these people you've just driven in by being silly
Yeah.
and stupid.
Listening.
And that was the angle I want to tell you about how do you make KNUS known. So what I did was I remembered an old thing that people used to do, sit on flagpoles and things like that. I said, I think I'll put a guy up on top of a flagpole. So I got an engineering company to build it, so it went way up in the air. It was really a little penthouse, kind of. It wasn't very large. We put a bed up there, put a television up there, and put a telephone there, and told people they could call him anytime they wanted to. Gave them the phone number in the air. And then I had to have a guy up there. So I put the guy up there, and they said, what's happening to him? I said, well, he's a problem. We has to break the record, and the record's like 340 or something like that days. And he hasn't been up there but 3 or 4 days, and he wants down. Well, okay, what do we do now? And so I said, well, let's just temporarily put a halt on this thing. I got an idea.
This is genius.
So I got another guy and brought him in. And I said, I talked to him, whoever he was, and I said, John, this guy right here, I think can do it. How do you think he's going to do it, Ken? I said, he used to be in prison. He did about 5 years, so he stayed up there 349 days, something like that.
He hired a felon, yeah.
Yeah, I did. Well, most of us are felons in this business. So anyway, it was, nobody thinks about stuff like that. That's not just thinking outside the box. It's just said kind of crazy. It is crazy.
Yeah.
But the crazier you are, sometimes the better it works.
But those promotions were unbelievable, and one after the other that made the stations #1. I missed a staff meeting back in the early 70s, and I became part of one of those when I rode a bicycle. It was a race against the jock from KLIF, me, the jock from KTSA in San Antonio, and a jock from KLTE Houston. And we rode from San Antonio to the KLIF studio in downtown Dallas, and then to Houston. So I learned the Lord's Prayer.
Well,
this is kind of crazy stunts that he did that got attention.
You remember the boat race down the...
Sure, absolutely. The rapids,
Yeah.
yeah, I do very well. Yeah, sure.
So Ken, what was the most difficult lesson you had to learn in broadcasting?
How to talk. Seriously.
Tell them that. This guy's from Mississippi.
Yeah, they used to call KLIF all the time. And Gail was downstairs, a wonderful lady, and she'd answer the phone. She'd ring me up in the control room. I'd pick up a hotline. She'd say, I got another one, Ken. And I said, who is it? She said, somebody wants to know who that delightful young man on the radio is who has the beautiful upstate New York accent. She said, he's from upstate Mississippi. No, that was really tough. It took me about 4 years to do it, because when you grow up around people who are not formally well educated, and I did, poor, and they don't have the language skills that you would like to have, then you start paying attention to what they're saying, and you realize you're not saying the same thing the way they are, and they mumble. Every culture in this country has you can almost, Dottie says it all the time. I say, I know where they're from. You can tell. And if you go to, you go to East Texas, for example. East Texas is one accent. It's kind of slow, and it's kind of like that, when I come down here, and when I come to this city, it's so big, I can hardly even get around with it. We talk like that. You move on over to Arkansas, and it gets a little bit more nice, so they get up there like that, and they say, we got some good crops coming in this year. We're going to have some You laugh now, but it's really hard to stop doing it. And so it's a really funny thing there, the way they talk. And so I said, I'm going to learn how to talk. And I had a really nice thing happen to me back when all teachers did super things. A teacher in my junior year in high school said to me, I want to see you after school. I thought that was a big problem for me. And she said, are you aware that you're really a pretty smart fella? I said, no, ma'am. And she said, well, do you know you're funny? And I said, no, ma'am. Because I was nobody. I was just everybody in my school. Most of them had a lot of money. I didn't. I grew up in the Delta, don't forget, largest cotton plantation in the world. So those guys had money. My family did not. And it worked out like this in how I learned to work. I said to my dad one day, Mrs. So-and-so down the street, walked home from school, walked past her house, and she has a motorcycle for sale out front. Her son's going to college. I'd like to buy that motorcycle. And he said, how much is it? And she said, $100. And he said, where are you going to get $100? I said, I thought you may give me $100. He said, I don't have $100 to give you. Get in the car and I'll tell you how to get it. Went in town, circulation department, he knows the guy. So he talks to the circulation manager, and he says, you got a paper route close to this house? And he said, I do, as a matter of fact. And he said, why don't you give it to him? He said, son, how old are you? And I said, 10. He said, 10? He said, well, I'm 10 years old. My dad said, he's big and he's strong. Let him do it. So I did. I said, now, what about the $100? He said, that's on you. And he pulled up in his wallet, he handed me $25. He said, you figure it out, see what you can do. So I go to knock on the door, talk to her. And she says, yeah. She says, I can. You got a paper route? You're going to pay it back, the rest of it? I said, yes, ma'am. And she said, I believe you will. I did. And that's how I got my motorbike. So that opened up the world for me. Only Billy Woods and I had motorbikes in the 4th grade. I'm sorry, it's sort of leaking down my throat. Anyway, I had an idea about how to work. And the lady who was the teacher, thank you, Oscar, I appreciate that. I'm going to drain away here in a minute. Thank you.
Wait, that's vodka.
Here, Dottie. So anyway, no, I quit. I had vodka one night at a party for Ray Stevens. At a party for Ray Stevens. I'm not going to tell them all of it. I just tell them all. So that was a big. Dick Hitt used to be a big columnist at here.
Dick Hitt.
Yeah. So Dick Hitt says he comes over and he's been drinking vodka, and so have I. And I don't drink, Never did drink. So he says, you know that new guy at your local radio station here? And I said, yes, sir. I'm 20 years old, whatever. And he said, I don't like all you guys. I said, really? Well, that's interesting. He said, I think y'all are all perverts, first off. I said, okay. I did looking at him. She said, he did what? He did say this. He's an idiot is saying this to me. And he said, oh, and another thing. And Dottie's standing there, and he spills his drink on her. While he says this. Well, now, I'm kind of old-fashioned. Don't forget, I'm from the Deep South. Ladies are ladies still to me. So I was smoking a cigarette. I don't know why. But I had a cigarette. What's the most insulting thing I could do? He's got his glass like this, and I dropped it in his glass. Psst. And then I set the rest of it up his nose. Telling him the bad side of it.
Yeah.
So then I went out and I got it straightened out in the car lot out there. So that was the end of that. Dick became a very good friend of mine after that.
For all of you who don't know, he was a huge columnist
so back to
in the Dallas Morning News.
Well, that's true. He was. So back to the story about the deal with going into KNUS and what was I talking about the
flagpole,
the flagpole and all. So we got that up. That was running, and then but that was really a part of that teacher who did that for me, taught me that. And she said, I want you to be in the thespian group. And I said, I don't even know what thespian means. And she said, acting. She said, you can be an actor. I said, you think so? So here was the big move. This was the change in my life. She said, and not only that, but we have a deal where the guys who are in the thespians, you'll be in the stage on the play, you're going to be in the key role in the next year's play. But the guys who are here get to be on the radio every Saturday afternoon, the Teenage Disc Jockey Show. So I walked down there with them, and I lasted a long time. 2 or 3 of the other people stayed around a little bit. And I watched these people doing this stuff, and I said, you get paid to do this? And they said, yeah. I said, boy, I want to do it. So I worked at that little radio station in Greenville, Mississippi for 2 years. I never got a dime. But I got a lot of experience. Yeah. And then on top of that, I learned about things like how how you can do things if you really put your mind to it and if you work really hard. So since that time, I've always been the first guy there, and the guy turns off the lights at night. And that's noticed when you do that. So I went to college because I didn't have the money to go, but the people at the radio station told me, we'll get you a job. And I go to Hattiesburg, Mississippi, big time. And so I go to Hattiesburg, and I become the program director in no time at all. Guess why? Because he calls me and he says, everybody's just quit. Have you quit too? And I said, no, sir, I need a job. I said, why did they quit? And he said, they quit because they didn't like the money I was paying them. And so he called his accountant back in the back. He said, Lightsey, come here. Stan Lightsey comes up and he said, yes, sir. He said, he's the new program director. How much money you make, son? I said, $50. He said, give him 70. So I'm the program director. Big money.
Well, you, at some of your stations, I remember in Dallas, you were paying some disc jockeys $750,000.
No, we weren't either.
Maybe close to $1 million.
No,
That's what you told me.
No, we weren't. We're paying them over $1 million.
Over $1 million. Over $1 million.
So anyway.
So who were some of your favorite DJs?
In Los Angeles, I liked a guy named, who were the two favorites I liked? One guy was, you know the guy who was on Lafayette, Gary Owens. I liked him a lot. And then the guy who did, nobody knows he was a really great disc jockey. No, not Al Norman Jr., but Bob Kramer. That's who it was.
Oh, Bob.
He was great. Boy, he was a good disc jockey. I never heard anybody like that. So, all of that other stuff led back to, thank you very much. All that other stuff led back to where here I am, I'm in Hattiesburg, Mississippi, and all these guys are Vietnam vets, and they're 4 or 5 years older than I am. And they start playing the wrong side of the record. I said, you'll not do that again. So I took a key and keyed those sides of the record so they couldn't do it. And they said, what is this all about? So you got to get a little cred with people like that, And so that's what changed. And then I heard a radio station in New Orleans, WNOE in New Orleans, owned by Gordon McLendon's father-in-law, who was the governor. And I heard a radio station format I'd never heard before. And that was really good. And I wanted to do that. I wanted to be like that. So I started going over to see Shad, and he let me sit in the control room with him. And then I heard that he was going to be going away soon. I got really despondent because I said, I want to be rich and famous and have rank. That's what I want. So certainly wasn't rich, it wasn't famous. So I called Keesler Air Force Base and said, I want to fly fighter jets. And they said, you finished up college, boy? I said, no, sir. Well, come on over and see us anyway. So I went over to see them. And I took all their tests and everything. They were very nice. They said, what we're going to do is we're going to take a chance on you. We think you're one of us. We're going to train you as a fighter pilot. I said, great. And then somebody told me, you hear about that opening they had in Mobile? And I said, no, what was that? He said, radio station. I said, ooh, the big time, Mobile, Alabama. I'm going to go over there. I called him on the phone. I said, I wanted to apply for the job. He said, well, bring me an air check. I said, he said, send it to me. I said, I'll bring it to you. So I took it over there. You know what he said to me? Really good. He said, played it, listened to it, looked at me and said, you're the worst thing I've ever heard in my life. He said, I never heard anybody so bad. It's awful. And I said, well, I can get better maybe. So he hired me. He said, we're desperate, you're hired. So he did. There goes my flight training. Didn't matter, I got to fly later anyway, fly planes. I like planes. So I stayed there with them for a while. Shad went on to San Diego. To San Diego, to KDEO. He called me one day and he said, I think you're getting to the point you're good enough to work in San Diego. Come on out here, we got an opening. Send them an air check. I did. They said, you're not bad, kid. Okay, come on out. So I go to San Diego. My friend Shad, to be later in the story, a sad story. It's the worst thing I've ever done. I've never quite gotten over it. So I go there and I get hired. And Dottie and I, in the meantime, have met in Mobile. Her daddy owned the station the radio station was in, owned the building the radio station was in. He said, don't ever, ever hang out with those disc jockeys. They're bad people. He was right. So I ran away with her. We eloped, and she came out to San Diego. She was 17. I was, 19, 20? 20. And we had more fun. We went to Disneyland 2 or 3 times a week, free. Everything at the radio station was free. It was all free. And the sad part that had happened just before that was I'd only been there about 2 or 3 weeks, and Shad let me use part of his apartment. They had a corporate apartment, and he got everything in there free, all of it, nothing. And he said, you don't have a place to live, and Dottie's going to be coming, so why don't you take the apartment, this bath part over here, because I work in the mornings, you work at night. I said, that's really nice of you. So that's what we do. And one morning, about 3 weeks after I've been there, my door is being beaten on soundly. And I said, who is that? And he said, it's me. Shad, open the door. Got a problem here. Got to talk to you about. So he tells me what the problem is. He said, go with me to the radio station. I got to go pick up my final check. And I said, what's your final check? He said, I just got fired. I said, oh, gee, man, you got fired, but I'm going to quit too. He said, no, you're not. You're going to stay with the program and do it. And I said, well, what's going to happen to the morning show? He said, they got a new morning man. I said, who is he? And he said, what would you have done? So I said, Ted, I'm not going to do it. Yeah, you are. He said, I'm going back to St. Louis. I got friends there. I already got a job there anyway if I want it, so that's where I'm going to go. So I do what he says, make the best of it. And so Dottie and I go down to the Brown Derby Cafe in Los Angeles and buy one piece of pie and split it. And split a, it was good. Split a Coca-Cola, whatever it was, and had more fun than you could imagine. And sometimes in the daytime, we'd go up into the mountains in the snow. And then in the afternoon, we'd go play around in the ocean. And then one day, a fellow called from here, he spent most of his life here, and died about 2 years ago, I guess, Chuck Dunaway. And Chuck Dunaway was a fabulous guy. So he called me and said, I've heard you. I want you to come here. I said, okay, I was talking today to a couple of people about this. We did what was called climbing radio markets, getting better and better, bigger and bigger, more and more money. So we did that, and I got a job at K-Box in Dallas. And I went there, and while I was on the air, a guy called me on the phone. I knew who he was because I'd heard his radio show in Oklahoma City. And that station went all over the world. And then I'd heard that he went to Pittsburgh. He was still a young guy. And he opened the door and he said, hi, I'm Rod Roddy. And I said, Rod Roddy? He said, I am. He said, I'm going to Atlanta. I'm going to tell him about you. Well, he went to Atlanta. He did tell him about me, and I did get a job there. One day, Rod called me and said, guess where I am, Kenny? I said, I have no idea. And he said, I'm the new host on The Price is Right. And that's what he did.
The come on down guy.
Come on down.
Come on down. Yeah.
That was Rod Roddy. We used to go every time Dottie and I would go out there on business, we'd go to Martin's, which was his favorite place to eat. And the door would open and there'd be 2 empty seats there, and Rod would walk in with us and they would say, Rod Roddy, come on down. So I was really happy for him. He became a huge success. And he's the guy who first told me, he said, that little crazy voice you do about like Granny Emma. Yeah. And he said, you ought to do that and do it more often. Let that be a main part of it. He didn't tell me let it be the show, but that's what it became.
It was Granny Emma. She's a little Mississippi. Little Mississippi
a lot of Mississippi, but she was filthy rich, so she didn't care much what you said. She'd fire you. One of my favorite things to do was one day I would just do this off the wall, and nobody cared. It's fine. They thought it was funny. I walked in, and I flicked the microphone open at 6 o'clock, and I said, "Oh, Granny, there's somebody sitting out there in that old chair. It looks like Mr. McLendon." That's who it is. I said, "Gordon McLendon." Yep. I got him out there. I told him I wanted to see him. I want to talk to him. Got some things we got to talk about. And I said, well, it's pretty impressive, but it's kind of rude, don't you think? The guy owns this thing, super rich, I'm more super richer than he is. What's he want for this? I'll buy this place. Give me a check in the bank, don't mean nothing to me. I'll get rid of him. I probably ought to run him off by now anyway. just keep getting crazier and crazier. And it was fun. And so I would say after about 15 or 20 minutes, Mr. McLendon is still out there in the chair. I know he is. Don't talk too loud because I don't want him to know what we're doing in here, but just leave him out there. So at about 9:15, Granny says, I think right now I'm going to leave. Well, what about Mr. McLendon out here? I'm going out the back way. I'm going to do him like he does his employees. So, you do stuff like that. He got a kick out of it.
Well, you'd poke fun at him, but also just a whole lot of people, like Clint Murkison, who owned the Cowboys,
right,
who you hung out with a lot.
Yeah, I did.
But
yeah.
you would really roast him on the air with Granny Emma.
It was fun.
With Granny Emma.
It was fun. But speaking of that, one little funny thing there, Dottie would listen to me every morning on the way into work to make sure I got there okay. And one morning, she told me this later, I can't believe it, but she's listening to the station, and there's an ice storm out there. And the mic clicks on, and anybody here see Ken Dowe? I bought kid grandson, he can't drive worth nothing. He got old cheap jalopy car. I bet he said a wreck and killed himself. Dottie said, what? What do you do? She says, I thought there was a real person, like you fooled me on that one. So Granny Emma became a real big part of the show. And it was whenever something important was happening, she was right on top of it, basically with the Cowboys. And the Cowboys just became great friends of mine. Some of them were just terrific guys.
Who was the nicest one you worked with?
Of the Cowboys?
Yeah.
Danny was probably the. I'd start saying, you'd have to say probably the nicest of all was Roger Staubach, because Roger was. He would do anything for me,
Yeah.
When I bought a radio station in Oklahoma City, I said, Roger, would you do me a commercial? He said, sure, what do you want? And I said, your number is 12. The frequency on the radio station is 102. So would you do this? And he did it. He stood in front of the camera. He said, when you're all in Oklahoma City, see this? 1, just put a 0 in the middle of it. 2, and you'd be at 102. And that's my friend Ken's radio station. So that he would do that. Danny Reeves was just a nice person, the most competitive man I've ever known. I used to play racquetball with Danny all the time. He'd even come downtown to play at Gordon's Hangout, the private club down there. He would get so furious with me. He's a professional. The guy's an all-star. I can't keep up with him, And so he goes out there and he slams the ball as hard as he can. I step out of the shower. Dottie says, "Have you had a look at your back or your bottom lately? You're nothing but blue." I said, "But I can't let him see me cry. I still go in there." So Danny was playing me one day, and he meant it, and I didn't know he did. He said, "You and those little whip shots that you do." I said, "What's the matter, Danny boy? You don't like my tour of the court game?" I said, "Does him have some bad knees? Is that right? Is it real hard for you to stop and cut and turn and come back in line?" "I bet it is." I said, "Why do you think I'd do it?" So he threw his racket down and he said, "I'm never playing with you again." I said, "I don't care." So he left. But he was the nicest. Tom Landry was probably the nicest of all the Cowboys. People don't know that. But when I would come in there, out there, just to see him for a second or something, one day I went out and I was going to talk to one of the Cowboys, and he's coming through the door at about the same time Dan Reeves and Craig are talking. And
Craig Martin.
Yeah, Craig Martin. He looks at me and he looks at them and he says, "Hey, Ken, how you doing, buddy?" I said, "I'm all right, Coach." He said, "These two boys over here don't seem to have enough to do." And he had a football in his hand. He flipped it to me and he said, "Go work them out." But he was, he was that kind of a guy. He was a really super guy. And Clint would then from there, I talk about him a lot on there. I made fun of him. I said, "I only like you because you got a stupid haircut, and I've never seen anybody with one." So for somebody from MIT with the highest score ever, you're one of the dumbest people I ever saw. And I'd do that all the time to him. He thought it was funny. So he would call me and he'd say, "Hey, let's have lunch." And pretty soon it got to the point that lunch was 3 days a week. And the guys around, the stations got mad at me about that. Where you go? How come you don't come to all the luncheons we go to? And I said, I go out and hang out with Clint. Do you really do that? I said, yeah. I said, he's a nice guy. He's smart. I like to listen to him. And the only two geniuses I've ever known, I'm not sure about Clint, but Gordon was a bona fide genius. He was one smart guy. And I would say that Clint was pretty close. So I'd go out there and Clint would put on a show for us. He would clown a lot. And then it got to the point that we were, he would call and say, he had a private island. He said, you and Dottie want to go to the island this next week? And I'd say, yeah, let's do that. So we'd go to the island. And private island off the Bahamas. He'd call ahead, talk to the major domo. He'd come bring the boats over and everything. And then we would sit down and we'd have people there. Jimmy Carter's sister was there and people like that. And the biggest thing that ever happened with him when that happened, I don't mean not to answer your story totally, but with Clint, the whole thing was, I don't know why he liked me so much, but he did. And maybe just because I talked to the Cowboys a lot, because I would. I'd pick up the phone and call Don Meredith and I'd say, Meredith. And he'd say, Granny, what time is it? It's time for you to get up and get out of town. What did I do this time? Yeah. I said, have you not seen the game yesterday that you tried to play? Most worstest game I ever saw. I think what you need to do is get on the road. I'm going to have Clint trade you. You know where you're going? You go into Buffalo. I'm going to put you in Buffalo. That's what I'm going to do. Oh, great. Don't do that for me. Later on, when Dottie and I owned the home in Santa Fe, we knew that we ran into Don one night at a party, and he started introducing us. He said, I want y'all to meet my friends, Ken and Dottie Dowe. I do not introduce them to all my friends because they know all my ex-wives. So, but anyway, yeah, go ahead.
Well, we're going to wind up here in a minute, but what's the worst mistake you ever made in broadcasting? Because you've been an owner, you're a manager of all the McLendon stations, top DJ. What's the worst mistake you ever made?
Coming here tonight? No, I love you guys. It's really more fun than I thought it would be. The biggest problem, I do need to tell you this, is that when you sit down and try to write something for 65 years, there's no way you can complete a story. You can't tell all the stories. Every story links to another story, and then pretty soon you look like a buffoon sitting up here trying to tell them all. But the worst mistake I ever made was buying 2 or 3 small-town radio stations. And I'm not trying to take anything away from anybody who owns one. It's just that I wasn't capable of doing it. What happens is you go to a small town, you don't get ratings like arbitrons all the time. You have to play golf with the guys who are the mayors or the leaders of the community, and you don't get any rating. You can't change any ratings because you have to get ratings. You can raise your rates. And then when you raise your rates, you raise your revenue. Cost of operation is basically the same, except for the people that you are, enamored with who are doing a good job for. And so you end up with stations you don't really like to have anything to do with, and you lose on them. It's like, going to the crap tables all the time, and you keep playing the same stupid game, and they take your money away from you. So I got out of all that, and then I retired, and then I had a friend. You asked me about the money a while ago. I had a friend in Dallas, and he had an urban radio station. For those of you who don't know, that means usually black, or in this case, it meant kind of black and kind of white. And he said, I need some help. And I'd helped him 2 or 3 times before. And I said, I don't want to do it. And then his daughters started calling me. One of them cried, and she said, please help my daddy. He can't pay his bills. It's a really bad situation, Mr. Dowe. Would you help him? I said, yeah, I'll go talk to him. So I go out and talk to him, and I said, okay, I'll do it for a little while, but I won't do it long. And he said, well, I can't pay you the kind of money you're accustomed to making. I said, that's all right. We'll work something out. He said, well, would you take a cut, in whatever the net of the station is? Can I pay you that? And I said, no, you can't pay me that. He said, I got to pay you something. I said, gross. I said, don't you and I know a lot about the movie business? Don't we love it? He said, we love it. I said, well, I want to get paid on the gross, because if I'm not in charge here, I can't control what you're spending. And then the way we'll do it is we'll set up a long-term commitment, and I'll sign it, and I'll put it together for you. What's the biggest problem? We already know the research had come in. You got the world's worst morning show. You need to change the radio station's call letters. You need to fire everybody who's there. You cannot stay around here anymore. New format, new everything. So we go out with a guy who told us that, and this friend of mine is crying. He said, I really got to do that? I said, do I have to do it, Ken? I said, I don't think so, Hyman. Let me talk about it. Let me think about it. I come in the next day. I said, don't fire anybody. Here's what we're going to do. I said, I'm going to change it, and I want all the really dirty stuff that you got on the air. I want you to take it off. I'm taking it all off. Here's what you need to know. Now, this is a problem for a lot of people. I am commander-in-chief. I am in total control. You go sell advertising. The rest of it, do not even talk to the disc jockeys unless you're spoken to first, because I don't want you playing around with this. This is a very serious deal. He said, I agree to that. And so first thing I had to do was the morning show. So I got all the morning show together and put them in a room, nice area. And I said, wanted them to be in on the deal. You guys, businessmen, you'll all understand this. I don't think Hyman did. I said, what I want you to do is take yellow tablets. I said, fill this thing out. Tell me everything that's wrong with this radio station. So we sat there all morning long into the early hours of the afternoon and writing, tell me everything that was wrong with it. I said, thank you. I'll get back with you on Monday and we'll make those changes. They said, kid, this is a great guy. This is a great guy. One of them was a really overweight little gal who worked in, I said, what do you do, Nanette? She said, well, I'm just in the streets. And people call in, they talk to me outside. And I said, I'll tell you what, how would you like to have a full-time job? That's part-time. What do you make? She said, I make $8 an hour. I said, nah, we'll do better than that. I want you to, I'll start you off at this. And when your ratings come in, as they go larger and larger, I'll pay you even more. She said, what's you going to start me for? And I said, $50,000 a year. Is that okay? And she said, yeah. So then these guys are back in the building on Monday. And you know what they told me? Everything I knew they would. Do you know what I wrote down in the papers? Nothing. I didn't write anything. I just let them I let them say, we are in control. We know what we're doing. This is what this is all about.
And you turned it around.
And they went nuts. They just said, no, this is great. And I said, if you can do this. And everybody in Dallas would come out, the newspapers, the television stations and all. And we were out in kind of a little hut on the wrong side of town. And I'd go by there. I wouldn't stay all the time, but sometimes I'd just drop my head in, but I was always talking to them. And when they fell out of the format, they always knew Ken's going to catch up. One night I was listening to it, and I said, that's not music I approved. I didn't approve that being programmed that way. Called him on the phone. Oh, hi, Ken, man. How you doing? How you doing? I'm just down here. I said, what are you playing? You got a new format? And he said, oh, no, sir, not a new format. I said, well, it sounds like it. That's not my format. It's not what you're supposed to be doing. He said, well, I said, tell you what you do. When you get off the air, what time you get off? He said, 6 a.m. I said, come see me in my office. He said, oh, you don't have to do that. I can come outside. I said, I'm at your office right now. I'm sitting in there waiting for you. He came in, and I said, don't do that. I said, this is not punishment for you for what you did, but it's punishment for other people to see you can't do it. Goodbye. Get your stuff. Get out. And so all of a sudden people said, this guy don't play. For real. So when you do that and you watch what you're doing and you stay straight and honest and above board, the television stations would come out and say, what we want to know is, don't you have a couple of guys in the morning show? They're the highest paid people in the city. They make more than all the TV people do. And I said, yes, they do. And I said, why do you think that is? And well, I guess because they're good. I said, they're good and they bring in a lot of money for us, a lot of money. So we don't just take it all and stick it in our pockets. We share it with them. So yeah, I had a bunch of people there who made, $500,000 a year, $800,000 a year, $1.5 million a year, $2 million a year. And I was happy to pay it to them because look at what they were doing for me. So I let it go like that. And that's what we did. And that's really basically how you handle a business, I think. I think you let the people run it, or let them think they do. And when they, slide off a little bit, say, don't do that again. If you do it again, there'll be a problem. And I did some, to end that, when I did some people from time to time, I would consult for them. And one of the deals that was probably as close to anything like that I ever saw was I got these big bulking guys, looked like they played linebacker for a major football team. And my friend owned the station and it had gone straight into the ground. So he called me and said, would you take a look at it? Would you take a look at it? And I said, yeah, I will. So I go down there and I look at it and I listen to it and I said, guys, you're really off the mark here. This is not going to work. You can't play that. You can't put these kinds of things on the air, and you have too much talk here, and you have that. You have to like, and they got belligerent. I mean, Saturday afternoon at 3 in the afternoon, I'm in one of these giant buildings like this, and there's only one of me and 3 or 4 of them. He said, well, they all say the same thing, by the way. Everybody in every business says it. It's going to get there. We're almost there. We're almost there. We got it now. We're going to make it work. And they said that to me, going to make it work. And it's coming. And I pulled out, if you don't know, those of you don't, an Arbitron is a very thick book with all the ratings in it and what they have. I said, and you think you've got it, you're doing well now? Because you can track it month by month. I said, I got a book here that says you suck. And they said, huh? I said, you do. I said, you are really bad. So what I want you to do is what I want you to do. And if you don't do that, I don't want you back. And I'll know it if you don't do it, and I'll get rid of you. 1 year and 2 months later, new #1 radio station in Houston, Texas, because all they did was what they should have been doing. And then, the final thing is to tell you that's interesting about all this, very interesting to me, is Shadow Shea, the guy I had to let go. Danny Kaye called me, the entertainer, and I said, I'll do your radio station. That was a bad mistake. I shouldn't have. It was, unions are great, and I'm all for that. But these guys were so overrun with union people, all I did was sit in my office all day long and talk to them and say, well, wait a minute.
This is out in California.
No, this was in Cincinnati, Ohio. And when we left, I told Dottie to turn the camera around and take pictures of it. And she said, why am I doing this? I said, to show you that I don't want to ever come back again, because it was horrible. We went through all this. We had a great radio station. It was really fun. And Danny Kaye was nice to me, and so were the rest of the people, but I just couldn't deal with that stuff. I can't do anything. I can't let you come in, you've got great ideas, I got to go talk to him and get him to approve it. Yeah. I don't do that.
We got to wind up, but okay, from high school to now in broadcasting, would you do it again?
Oh yeah, it's fun. Yeah, it's like fighting a war. Well, that sounds bad, but it really is. Like, nobody dies. So you just simply say, are you with me on this? We can get those guys over there. Well, I don't know, Mr. Dowe. I don't know if I'll do it. Yeah, you do. We can do it. Let's beat them. Well, they've got all this big money. I'll tell you the end of that story about that. You know why I never worked for a major corporation? No offense intended, ladies and gentlemen. When Gordon sold out, he said, you can do whatever you want to, or Dad and I will be in business with you, whatever you like. But take your time, figure it out. So ABC came in to see me, and they had 3 stations in San Francisco, and they said, we want you to run our stations out here. Now, I want you to hear the logic of this, and ask me if this is critical thinking. He said, what we want you to do is run our stations, because we're just dogs in that market. We don't do anything. And I said, you think I'm the guy to do it? And they said, oh, yes. And here, we'll pay you this much money to do it. I said, that's a very handsome salary. I like that. I might do it. And they said, the only thing is about your request that we would have to pay for the move. We can't pay to move your stuff out to California because that's not a company policy. You have to be here with us before that goes. And I said, that's the problem with you. If I've got some young woman with a baby and she needs to make $100 a month more, and I want to pay her, I'm not going to call you and ask. And that was the deal I made with Gordon. He's the only honorable person I won't say it that way. He is the most honorable person I have ever worked for. He did everything he said he was going to do. He did. He never tried to cheat me out of it, any of it at all. And he is a person that I wanted to model myself after on how you deal with people. So when you have something like that, and you are involved in it to such an extent that it becomes a part of your love, then it's more than just going to work. I didn't just go to work. I still turned off the lights when I left. I still turned them on first thing in the morning. And the only other thing, I had one more point I was going to make with you about all that. What was it? I told you I would do this. In the beginning, Shadow Shea, the guy who was my benefactor and got me the job, let me live with him, and I took his place. When we got to Cincinnati, all these people aged 40 and over had worked there for 50 plus years. And I'm a kid. I'm like 24, 25 years old. And they said, you fire him, Ken. And I said, why don't you fire him? You're the owners, you know, you do it. I don't want to fire these people. You must fire them. All these people have to go. So I'm sitting there, I'm in a different environment now. I'm not accustomed to that. I don't do well at orders. I got a bid to every fraternity there was at my school and tried 2 of them and said, you ought to be mine. Get out, leave me alone. Here's $1, go shine your own shoes. You know, I'm not nice like that. I don't want to do that. So I said, that's the problem we have here. And so we ended up with I got rid of that station, and they told me to fire everybody there. And then they said, but you must fire the program director. I said, of all people, don't make me do that. Shadow Shea. It was a good thing. At the end of this there's a good thing. You remember the guy who said I was the worst he had ever heard? He was terrible. You remember the guy who told me in Mobile, never heard anybody as bad as you are? I had a partner there. His name was, he worked there too, Jim Tabor. And Jim Tabor would have done anything. He was a little rich boy, had all the money he wanted.
His dad was had a major TV show at the time.
Yeah, I did.
A hunting show, Africa.
Yeah,
Africa.
Yeah. And his mother owned all of the bottling rights for Royal Crown Cola and everything. He used to say to me all the time, I'd pay to go to work at KLIF. He couldn't get there. The truth was he wasn't good enough. He just wasn't good enough. So when I took over all of that, Don McGregor called me, the one who said I was the worst he'd ever heard. He said he just lost his job, had a big job. And he said, I've lost it. Can I come see you? And I said, sure. He said, I'd like to apply. Would you hire me? I said, sure. Come on, I got a place for you. I put him in that place. And he said, now, he did a cool thing. I always thought this was really classy. He said, I want you to know, I know you worked for me one time, but it's not like that anymore. The roles are reversed. I'll do whatever you say do. And I said, oh, you don't have to tell me that. And then I hired Jim Tabor and said, you can come to KLIF. And he said, what'll I do? So what I did, you talked about some of the crazy things you do. I gave Jim a telephone, and I called it the Tabor phone. And I said, we're going to put this in there. We're going to put this on the air with you. And anybody can call him anytime they want to, because you never can get through to a DJ. So anytime you want to call Jim and want a special record, just call him. Here's his telephone number. He became the hottest nighttime show we ever had. He was that good. But again, it's somebody like that you're, bringing along slowly. And outside that, last, I've been at Clint's Island. I don't have a radio station. I'm going to San Antonio because a guy who is Clint's longtime friend, Paul Truesdale. If you ever lived in California, you know Truesdale Estates, and Paul Truesdale is one of the richest men in the world. So Paul likes me on one of these island trips. He says, I want to drop Ken and Dottie off. And so I'm in his jet, flying along. He said, how much money do you make? And I proudly told him. I thought, my daddy made, $500 a month. He's going to be really impressed. And then I said, I told him. And he said, now tell me again about these 2 radio stations in San Antonio. I said, well, KTSA was okay. It was doing all right, but it was a middling radio station. Couldn't get to the top and stay. Then we had another radio station there. KTFM was an FM. Never went anywhere. And so I said, I did some things and brought some people in and talked to them and explained to them how I wanted to do it. And he said, and then what happened? You told me. I said, yeah. It has a 12 share. It has a 25% share of the audience. And he said, that's pretty good. I said, nobody was even close. It's number 1. And then it occurred to me that, critical thinking, that what you could do is, you'd still be number 1 if you had 15, by a long shot. So I turned the radio station around KTFM and made it well enough to get a 15 share. So I got the number 1 station with a 15 share and the number 2 station with a 12 share. Now we got 2 radio stations. He said, and how do you get paid for that? I said, well, get paid a lot of money, for going up and making things like that. And the last thing of it is I said, I got a credit card. I can go anywhere in the world I want to. Expenses paid. I got a lovely home. I got everything I need. He said, you make peanuts, son. I said, sir. He said, you make peanuts. Here I'm sitting in this private jet on the way to San Antonio. And I said, I never thought about it that way. He said, has he got any kids? And I said, no. He said, but I bet you're his son, aren't you? And I said, yeah, I'm his son. He loves me. Sure he does. He said, you're making him all this money, but soon you're making enough money that you'll be putting yourself in danger because it's all been done. And guess who really did it? He couldn't do it before, but he did it this time. So why would he pay you all that money? He's not going to do it. So what you have to do is go buy your own radio station. I said, Paul, I don't have the money for that, thousands, millions of dollars. He said, I'll give it to you. I'll be your partner. I said, what? So I didn't need a jet to be at 35,000 feet. I landed. Clint's on the phone. He said, did you talk to Paul a while ago? And I said, I did. He said, he says y'all are going into business together. He said, how come you didn't tell me that all that time ago? I said, because I think you're funny and you're kind of stupid in your own way, but I enjoy your company. Besides that, I like to live off you free, like this, big parties, all the stuff I'm doing. And he said, well, I wanted to do it. And I said, no, Clint, everybody hits on you. Everybody wants something out of you. I don't want anything out of you. You're just my friend. He said, my friends make me a lot of money. He said, here are 3 banks. Go to these banks. And I bought the station in his hometown.
Yeah. That's one of your biggest fans right there, too. Doctor, yeah.
Well, it's mutual admiration. His
Hey,
wife
listen.
says with Mutual Admiration Society.
Hey, thank you. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you. Sorry about all the draining. But I enjoyed it. Thank you all for having me.
We've got one piece of business, elections for the Golden Mic Club.
Go.
For this coming year. So, any nominations or?
We should entertain a nomination to re-elect the current officers.
Oh, well, okay.
Oh, shucks.
I've enjoyed being president. I'll do it another year. So. All right. What position do you want, Mary Mike? She's the past president, so.
That's right.
Well, I want to nominate Steve Eberhardt for Secretary Treasurer and Vice President. Okay. Anybody?
Sounds like acclamation.
Okay. All right. Hey, well, thank you very, very much for coming.
Thank you.
And thank you, Ken Dowe. Appreciate it.
Okay,
Thank you.
my friend.
See you next year.
Thank you.
One other thing, I've got a special presentation for Ken.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. We're all of it.
Ken?
That was fantastic.
There you go. How's that? An actual golden mic for Ken.
How much can you get for this?
Yeah.